as the temperatures continue to soar in the coming days, we could be facing highs up to 110 degrees Fahrenheit. The idea of surviving an Arizona summer without air conditioning might seem as absurd as wearing a heavy wool sweater in a sauna. Yet, the Amish, who are already known for avoiding modern conveniences, have chosen to settle in some of the hottest regions of the U.S. without a single air conditioning unit in sight. So, before you start breaking a sweat just thinking about it, let's pause and ask the real question. How do they do it? You might assume it's all about sheer willpower, and to some degree it is. But there's more to it than that. The Amish don't just tolerate the heat. They've developed ways to live with it, even thrive in it. Their approach is a mix of time-tested techniques, a cultural mindset, and clever design, all wrapped in a lifestyle that's a world apart from our own. And let's be honest, they've been around a lot longer than our modern gadgets, so maybe they're onto something. Here's where it gets fascinating. Arizona can experience summer highs of up to 120 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to cook an egg on the pavement. Most of us can't imagine life without air conditioning when the thermometer hits the triple digits. But here's something that might surprise you. For most of human history, air conditioning didn't even exist. It only became widely accessible in the mid-20th century. Before that, people had to find alternative ways to stay cool. And that's exactly what the Amish continue to do today, relying on natural, age-old methods that many of us have long forgotten. Have you ever walked into a stone building on a sweltering day and noticed how cool it feels inside? That's the kind of natural cooling the Amish use. But let's dive a bit deeper, because their cooling techniques go far beyond just thick walls. Here's an interesting tidbit. While the Amish way of life may vary depending on where they live, the core principles remain the same. In Arizona, they've had to get even more creative. This isn't Pennsylvania, with its lush green hills and cooler nights. This is the relentless, dry desert heat. But don't worry, I'm not suggesting you should toss out your AC unit and start wearing bonnets. We'll leave that to the experts. Instead, let's explore how the Amish manage to thrive in Arizona's extreme temperatures. Believe it or not, they're living proof that you don't need electricity to stay cool. And along the way, we might just discover that their solutions are simpler and smarter than they seem. Now that we've established why the Amish are tough enough to live without air conditioning in the Arizona heat, let's talk about how they actually do it. When it's 115 degrees Fahrenheit in the shade, pure toughness won't get you very far. The Amish have a much more effective strategy, and it begins with their homes. Let's talk about the power of thick walls and natural building materials. Picture this. You walk into a cool, shaded cave in the middle of the desert. Outside, it's sweltering, but inside it feels like a different world. Calm, cool, and bearable. That's the experience of stepping into an Amish home in Arizona. They've perfected the art of keeping the heat out by using thick walls made from natural materials like clay, adobe, and wood. These materials, sourced from nature itself, have incredible insulating properties that keep the heat from penetrating the interior. Here's the real secret. The thicker the walls, the less heat gets inside. It's almost as if the Amish are living inside giant thermoses, keeping the heat out and the cool air in. And let's be honest, in a place like Arizona, where the sun feels like it's trying to melt everything in its path, this method works like magic. The science behind it is simple, but brilliant. Thick walls absorb the sun's heat slowly, and by the time it starts to seep through, the sun has usually set, and the cooler desert air takes over. Think about it this way. If you were standing outside in the middle of summer with nothing between you and the sun, you'd be drenched in sweat in seconds. But if you were inside a thick clay and wood fortress, you wouldn't feel the heat immediately. That's the magic the Amish use. I remember stepping into an old adobe house once on a blistering summer afternoon. Outside, it felt like I was being slowly roasted alive. But inside, it was cool enough to relax, like someone had secretly installed an air conditioner without me knowing. That's the power of natural insulation. While most of us are cranking up the AC, the Amish are comfortably settled in their thick-walled homes, letting nature do the work for them. Here's something interesting. The idea of using thick walls to stay cool isn't an Amish innovation alone. Ancient desert civilizations in places like the Middle East and North Africa knew the importance of building with the right materials to stay cool in the heat. By using the right natural materials, you can remain comfortable without the need for modern technology. The Amish simply continue this ancient tradition, choosing natural solutions over modern conveniences. Now, let's dive deeper into why the materials the Amish use, like clay and adobe, are so effective. These materials are excellent at absorbing heat during the day and slowly releasing it at night when the temperatures drop. While the rest of us are sweating buckets and scrambling to figure out how to cool our homes without breaking the bank, the Amish are just sitting back, enjoying the natural cooling their homes provide without any need for extra effort. Wood is another favorite material for the Amish when it comes to building, and not just because it's easy to find. It's actually a surprisingly good insulator. When paired with clay or adobe, it helps keep the temperature inside the house steady. That means no sudden spikes in heat, just a consistent, comfortable environment. It's like bundling up in layers during winter to stay warm, but in reverse, layering your home to keep the heat out. Now, you might be thinking, sure, that works for the Amish, but wouldn't it be easier to just flip a switch and turn on the AC? Well, maybe. But here's the catch. Air conditioning uses a massive amount of energy, and that energy doesn't come for free. In fact, during an average Arizona summer, homeowners can end up spending $400 a month or more just to keep their homes cool. Meanwhile, the Amish are paying exactly $0 for their cooling method, unless you count the cost of the clay and wood, which is far cheaper than an electric bill. And let's not forget, their homes are naturally cool even in the hottest months, meaning they don't rely on energy-hungry machines to survive the summer heat. When you think about it, the Amish have figured out a smarter way to live. While the rest of us are stuck in an endless cycle of high energy bills and a house that can't seem to stay cool when the AC is struggling to keep up, the Amish are enjoying the comfort of homes that practically cool themselves. And the best part? They never have to worry about power outages. Ever had a blackout in the middle of July? Suddenly, that thick-walled house seems a lot more appealing, doesn't it? The Amish always look for ways to work with nature, not against it. They respect the environment and use the resources around them to create a lifestyle that's both sustainable and efficient. So while we're busy relying on electricity to stay comfortable, the Amish have found a way to live in harmony with the natural world. And in the process, they've come up with some pretty clever solutions to stay cool without a single air conditioning unit. The Amish have mastered the art of using what the environment offers and leveraging it to their advantage. In the case of their homes, the natural materials they choose are the perfect solution to surviving the extreme Arizona heat. But it's not just about staying cool, it's about building homes that are built to last. The durability of these materials means their homes don't just stay cool in the summer. They're strong enough to endure the harsh desert climate for decades, if not longer. So we've seen how the Amish use thick walls and natural building materials to keep their homes cool. But there's another clever strategy they employ that's often overlooked in modern housing: high ceilings. Now, it's not because they want their homes to resemble cathedrals or grand mansions. There's a very practical reason behind those tall ceilings, and it's all about combating the heat. Here's the deal. Hot air rises. It's a basic principle of physics, but the Amish take full advantage of this natural law. After a long, scorching day, the air inside their homes starts to warm up. However, instead of letting all that heat linger where they live, the high ceilings give the hot air a place to go. It naturally rises, staying out of their way. It's a simple yet brilliant design that keeps them cool without the need for any high-tech gadgets or modern systems. I remember walking into an Amish home for the first time, and one of the first things I noticed was the vast amount of space above me. The ceilings were so high it felt like you could play basketball indoors. But then something else struck me. I didn't feel the heat. The air up there was warm, but all the hot air had risen so far above where I was standing that it didn't affect me at all. The lower part of the room was cool and comfortable, creating a personal, cool zone of sorts. Not bad for a home with no AC, right? Here's the simple science behind it. As the day heats up, the air inside the house warms as well. But instead of trapping that heat at ground level, the tall ceilings allow it to rise and stay away from the living space. It's like giving the heat a one-way ticket to the top floor, while the lower levels remain comfortable and cool. In contrast, Many modern homes have low ceilings, which means there's nowhere for the hot air to go except back down into the living space. No wonder we're cranking the AC in the summer. The Amish, with their intuitive design, don't have to worry about that. Their high ceilings naturally create a separation between them and the heat, making staying cool much easier. And here's a little tidbit. Homes with higher ceilings can actually be 5 to 10 degrees Fahrenheit cooler at the living level than homes with standard 8-foot ceilings. That might not seem like much, but in the brutal Arizona heat, just 5 degrees can be the difference between feeling like you're roasting and being able to relax. For the Amish, who aren't relying on electric fans or air conditioning, that small difference is everything. By using high ceilings as part of their natural cooling strategy, the Amish have figured out a way to stay cool even in some of the hottest places on Earth, and they do it all without depending on modern technology. Their homes work with nature, not against it, creating an environment that's sustainable, comfortable, and energy efficient. Everything that's often missing from our modern approach to cooling. The Amish have a remarkable way of working with nature, rather than against it. Just like their thick walls made from natural materials, their high ceilings are another clever way they create cooler, more comfortable living spaces. No need for expensive air conditioners or sky-high energy bills. Just some thoughtful design and a little common sense. And speaking of design, this is where everything truly comes together. The natural materials we've talked about, wood, clay, and adobe, work hand in hand with the high ceilings. Those thick walls keep the heat from entering too quickly, while the tall ceilings provide space for the heat that does make it inside to rise. It's the perfect partnership. The walls block the heat, the ceiling lifts it, and the people inside stay cool. It's an all-natural cooling system that doesn't require a single watt of electricity. Let's be honest, most of us probably wouldn't give much thought to ceiling height when it comes to staying cool. We'd be too busy fiddling with the thermostat or searching for the right fan. But the Amish have already solved that problem before it even starts. They've designed their homes to work in harmony with nature, to let the hot air rise and the cool air stay low. No need for fancy tech, just timeless, smart design that's been effective for centuries. Here's something to think about. How many times have you walked into a room with low ceilings and immediately felt the heat hit you like a wall? It's like the air doesn't have anywhere to go, so it just sits there, making the room feel like a sauna. Now imagine walking into an Amish house with high ceilings. Instead of the heat hanging around at head level, it rises up and stays out of your way, creating a built-in buffer zone between you and the heat. It's a simple solution, but incredibly effective. And high ceilings don't just help with cooling, they also make the space feel much bigger and more open. Sure, the Amish aren't aiming for luxury, but I can't help but appreciate how much more spacious their homes feel compared to the cramped, low-ceilinged rooms many of us are used to. It's like getting two benefits for the price of one: more space and cooler air. But the Amish don't stop there. They've got another trick up their sleeves: trees. That's right. While most of us are frantically adjusting the thermostat or trying to get some relief from the heat with a fan, the Amish have already planned ahead. By strategically planting trees around their homes, they've got nature's air conditioning working for them, and it's free. This isn't just some romantic, nature-loving idea. There's real science behind it. A well-placed tree can reduce cooling costs by up to 25%. Yep, you read that right, 25%. But the Amish didn't need an energy-saving guide to figure that out. They've been shading their homes with trees long before air conditioning bills or cooling costs became a concern. Trees do more than just look pretty. They act as nature's umbrellas, blocking the sun and keeping the heat off their homes. When the Arizona sun is at its most intense, the Amish are grateful for every bit of shade those trees provide. Strategically positioned trees can significantly reduce the amount of heat that hits their homes, protecting the walls, windows, and roofs from direct sunlight. It's a brilliant low-maintenance system. Plant the trees, wait for them to grow, and enjoy the cool shade. It's almost like having a personal air conditioner that doesn't need electricity, filters, or repairs. And let's be honest, who needs an AC unit when you've got a tree doing all the work for free? I remember visiting an Amish family during the summer, and the first thing I noticed was how cool their yard was, even though the heat outside was blistering. I asked how they kept things so comfortable without an air conditioner, and they just pointed to the massive oak tree shading their house. "That's our AC," they said with a smile. Talk about efficiency, but the shade game doesn't stop at just cooling the house. The Amish also use trees to create shade in outdoor work areas, particularly where they farm. Imagine working under the hot Arizona sun without any relief, but the Amish, with their natural know-how, plant trees around their barns, fields, and workspaces. These trees provide much-needed shade during the hottest hours of the day, so they don't need fancy gadgets to cool off. Just good old-fashioned trees. Now, here's where the strategy really shines. The Amish don't just plant trees anywhere. They're strategic about it. For instance, they typically plant trees on the south and west sides of their homes, where the sun is strongest. By blocking the harshest rays, they can keep their homes cooler for longer. It's not just smart, it's nature at work. The Amish have figured out how to use the environment around them to create an ideal living space, and it's a method that stood the test of time. The Amish have a unique ability to work with nature, understanding the natural rhythms of the sun and using them to their advantage instead of trying to fight against them. It's a way of life that modern society seems to have forgotten in its rush to invent the next best cooling gadget. But here's something that will make you smile. Planting trees for shade is one of the oldest and simplest ways to stay cool. People have been doing it for centuries, long before air conditioning even existed. Somewhere along the way, however, we traded trees for machines and lost sight of just how effective the original method was. The Amish, however, never abandoned this simple truth. They know that nature's cooling system works best, and they've kept that wisdom alive. Trees aren't just for shade either. They also help cool the air through a natural process called evapotranspiration. In simple terms, trees release moisture into the air, which helps lower the temperature around them. It's like nature's version of a swamp cooler, but without any machinery or electricity. So, in addition to blocking the sun, trees actually cool the surrounding air. For the Amish, they're like multi-purpose tools growing right in their yards. And while you might not need the scientific term to recognize it, standing under a tree always feels cooler than standing in the sun, right? It's something we've all felt. Studies even show that the air under a tree can be as much as 10 degrees Fahrenheit cooler than the air in direct sunlight. That's a big difference when you're trying to beat the Arizona heat. The Amish have known this all along, long before anyone started studying it in labs. They've seen the benefits firsthand, generation after generation. Just like with their use of thick walls and high ceilings, the Amish approach to trees is all about working with nature. Instead of relying on expensive AC units or artificial cooling methods, they harness what's already available, trees to block the sun and cool the air. It's just another way they live in harmony with their environment, using simple, sustainable methods that don't require any fancy technology. Now let's go inside their homes again. If you've ever wondered how the Amish manage to keep their houses cool without flipping a switch, the answer is simple. They let nature do the work. Old-school ventilation is their secret weapon, and it's a technique as old as time. Imagine this. No air conditioning, no fans, no buzzing machines, just strategically opened windows to catch the perfect breeze. It might sound like something from another era, but trust me, it works. The Amish don't rely on gadgets or high-tech cooling systems. Instead, they use cross breezes to circulate fresh air throughout their homes, transforming what could be a sweltering house into a breezy, cool retreat. The key to this is timing and positioning. The Amish have perfected this art. They know exactly which windows to open at different times of the day, based on where the wind is coming from and how the sun moves across the sky. When the windows are open just right, it creates a natural airflow that pushes the warm air out and pulls the cool air in. It's like having a fan, but without the need for buttons or the constant hum of a motor. I remember visiting an Amish farmhouse on one of the hottest days of summer. As soon as I stepped inside, I was greeted by a gentle, cool breeze, almost as if the house itself was breathing. There were no fans, no air conditioning, just windows perfectly placed in harmony with the outdoors. I asked the homeowner how they managed such a comfortable temperature, and with a laugh, they simply said, "We let the wind do the work." Honestly, it felt like magic. Who knew that something as simple as opening a window at the right time could be so effective? What makes this system even more impressive is that it works in tandem with everything else we've talked about so far. Remember those high ceilings we mentioned? They play a crucial role in this system too. As the hot air rises, which it naturally does, it gets trapped up high, far above where people are sitting, cooking, or relaxing. Meanwhile, the cool air stays at the bottom, right where it's needed. This natural flow of air, combined with thick walls, high ceilings, and shade from trees, makes the Amish homes a cool refuge, even in the hottest weather. No technology required, just smart design and a little help from nature. By opening windows on opposite sides of their homes, the Amish create a natural cross breeze that sweeps through the house, pushing out the warm air while keeping the cooler air at ground level. It's an effortless way to maintain a comfortable temperature inside without relying on electricity. And the best part? No utility bills. Unlike modern air conditioning, which can rack up huge costs during the summer, this natural method is completely free. It's nature-powered cooling at its finest, and the Amish have been doing it for generations, long before electric fans even existed. Talk about getting the most out of the natural elements. But don't think the Amish stop there when it comes to staying cool. They have another trick up their sleeve: summer kitchens. Trust me, this is as ingenious as it sounds. During the scorching summer months, cooking indoors can quickly turn your house into an oven. The heat from just preparing a meal can raise indoor temperatures by 10 degrees Fahrenheit or more. Imagine turning on the stove when it's already 100 degrees Fahrenheit outside. No thank you, right? Well, the Amish had the same thought hundreds of years ago, so they came up with a brilliant solution: move the cooking outside. These summer kitchens are separate cooking spaces either built outside or attached to the house, but designed with the key goal of keeping the heat out of the living areas. While most of us are cranking up the AC after cooking a hot meal indoors, the Amish are outside, preparing their meals without raising the temperature inside. It's simple, but genius. The reasoning is clear. Heat rises, and if you don't want it to rise into your living space, you just keep it outside. Problem solved. Imagine this. The Amish summer kitchen is like the ultimate outdoor barbecue, but instead of grilling burgers and hot dogs, they're preparing full-course meals. Picture a roast chicken, potatoes, and fresh bread, cooked outside in a space designed to keep the heat out of the house. It's like having a picnic every day, but with much better food. Keeping the heat outside is one of the most practical ways to stay cool in the summer. Why add unnecessary warmth to your home when it's already hot enough outside? Once again, the Amish show us that they're working smarter, not harder. This approach is all part of their lifestyle, designed to work in harmony with nature, not against it. By building their homes and planning their routines around the seasons, they stay comfortable without needing modern conveniences, like air conditioning. Now, let's dive a bit deeper. Literally. When it comes to keeping things cool without refrigeration, the Amish have a time-tested solution that goes back centuries: ice houses. These aren't your typical sheds or barns. These are deep, insulated pits where ice harvested in winter is stored to last throughout the summer. It's a natural, pre-electricity freezer. Instead of plugging into the grid, it's buried underground, silently and efficiently doing its job. Picture this. While many of us are scrambling to buy ice bags for our coolers in the heat of summer, the Amish have massive blocks of ice stored underground, kept cool with layers of sawdust or straw for insulation. This system works remarkably well, even during the hottest months. It may seem surprising, but this simple method can keep food cold for months. Yep, ice houses can hold ice from winter all the way through the dog days of August. Meats, dairy, and other perishables stay fresh without the constant hum of a refrigerator. This is how the Amish keep things cold the old-fashioned way, by teaming up with nature's own freezer. Let's be honest, who needs a freezer when you've got an ice pit buried in the ground? It's the ultimate low-maintenance solution. No electricity, no cords, no bills. Just a shovel, some some straw, and a lot of common sense. Plus, there's the fun of harvesting ice in the winter. Forget about sledding or building snowmen. Cutting and storing ice is the real Amish winter sport. So while the rest of us rely on modern technology and expensive machines to keep cool, the Amish have found ways to make nature do the heavy lifting. Their homes, kitchens, and food storage systems are designed to work with the natural world using simple, effective techniques that have stood the test of time. And the best part? They're not just surviving the summer heat. They're thriving in it. I once tried to create my own version of an ice house in my backyard. Let's just say it didn't exactly go as planned. My setup was a small fan blowing air over a few trays of ice cubes, and let's just say the results were underwhelming. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. But the Amish? They've had a much more refined system in place for centuries. What's brilliant about their ice houses is that they fit perfectly into the broader Amish way of thinking, working with nature instead of trying to fight it. Just like they use cross breezes to cool their homes or plant trees for shade, the ice house is another way they let the elements do the heavy lifting. Rather than relying on electricity, they use the coldest months of the year to prepare for the hot ones. It's a natural, sustainable cycle that's been in use for generations. Now let's talk about something a little more unexpected: Amish clothing. If you've ever seen the Amish during the summer, you might have wondered how they manage to stay cool in those long sleeves and heavy-looking hats. Here's the twist. Those long sleeves and wide-brimmed hats are actually helping them stay cooler. Yep, just like desert nomads who wrap themselves in layers to protect against the heat, the Amish use the same principle. It may seem counterintuitive at first. After all, most of us reach for tank tops and shorts the second the temperature rises. But long sleeves actually provide protection from the sun, keeping your body cooler in the long run. Think about it. When the sun hits your bare skin, it's like putting yourself in a little oven. But when you wear light, loose clothing, it creates a barrier that shields your skin from the sun while still allowing air to flow underneath. It's like having your own personal shade. Here's a fun fact. Desert nomads and the Amish have something in common. They both use long sleeves to help beat the heat. You might not think of the Amish as desert dwellers, but the logic is the same. In fact, studies show that loose, light-fitting clothing can reduce the amount of heat your body absorbs, making long sleeves one of the oldest and most effective cooling methods there are. And for those of us who grew up with grandparents always telling us to cover up in the sun, it turns out they were onto something. That advice about wearing a wide-brimmed hat to stay cool, it's not just to avoid sunburn. It actually works to keep you cooler by shading your face and neck from the direct rays of the sun. It's like carrying your own little roof around with you. So maybe next time you step outside in the heat, you'll think twice about reaching for a sleeveless shirt and baseball cap. Instead, try a long-sleeve shirt and a big hat. Your grandma would be proud. At the end of the day, the Amish approach to dealing with the heat isn't just about clever tricks. It's about a mindset of resilience. They've learned to adapt to the environment, not by avoiding the heat, but by embracing it as a part of life. It's a mentality that's been passed down through generations of simple living. As the old Amish saying goes, it's about learning to live with what you have. And let's face it, after your first summer without AC, you really only have two choices: adapt or start Googling homes in Alaska. All of these strategies, from high ceilings to ice houses, are part of a lifestyle that works in harmony with nature. They prove that sometimes the best way to beat the heat isn't with the latest gadgets, but with smart, simple living.